Hi again, friends. This is Mika. Welcome back to Unipod Rising, my first ever and brand new YouTube channel. I'm not sure how often I'm going to be posting because I don't know what I'm doing. I just decided, well, like I said, I was guided to do this. I'm doing it. And at least from the beginning, at this point, I'm just kind of winging it. So before I get into anything else, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to those of you who watched my first video and who commented and who reached out to me directly, either with feedback. I've gotten a lot of love and support, and I'm so grateful. I have some really super people in my world, and I'm really lucky. So thank you. Let's see. So at some point I'll have to plan these things properly. But like I said, at this moment I'm winging it. I just kind of think, oh, let me do another video and tell them something new. So here's what I wanted to kind of go over. The prosthetic process is a little bit, or a complete mystery actually, to most people. And I haven't had a truly successful journey so far, but I'm on a successful journey now, right? This time it's all going to come together. So I want to try and share with you a little bit about what is happening and what it's like, and maybe give you some insight. So along the way, if you have questions, please feel free to leave comments in the comment section, obviously, and include any questions that you have. You can ask me questions about myself. You can ask me questions about the prosthetic process. You can ask me questions about the accident. You can ask me questions about mindfulness and meditation and how I use those things to maintain through whatever may come. So please, that'll certainly give me indication of what it is you're wanting to know more about, and that will allow me to cater these videos more to those of you who are watching, because in part I'm documenting this for myself, but in part I'm doing this because I want you all to kind of take this journey with me and to understand the process a little better. And that way, whether it's for our interactions, for your own edification, or for whoever else you might meet or already know that has gone or will go through an amputation and the process that is involved, anything that I can do to kind of help shed a little bit of light from my own perspective, I'm happy to do. So now, let's talk about the residual leg, right? So the residual leg, what's left of my leg, a lot of times is referred to in the medical community as a stump. So in the hospital, they'd come in and they'd say, "How's your stump?" And we did not like that word. My family and I were just like, that is so ugly. Like, how's your stump? It just, bleh, right? So one day my brother brought it up and we had a whole conversation about it, and he said, let's give it another name. So my family's pretty goofy, dark, twisty sense of humor. It's how we've always gotten through everything. And so this wasn't at all an odd conversation for us. And so my brother and I were thinking, and pretty much at the same time we both spoke, and he said, Joe, and I said, Legling. So it became Joe the Legling. So we actually turned the conversation on the doctors. So when the doctors would come in and they'd do their usual checkups, on a scale of 1 to 5, which are the happy faces, they've got it. If you've been in the hospital, you've seen that thing. What's your pain level like? How's your stump? And so once my brother and I had that conversation, we'd come up with alternative names. I informed the doctors that stump was no longer an acceptable term when they came into my room. And it took them a little while. They'd come in and they'd say stump still. But after a little while, they caught on and they'd either say Legling or Joe, or Joe the Legling. And it just made things a little bit lighter and a little easier to kind of talk through. And I think it also changed, it shifted the dynamic for the medical staff too, right? Nurses and doctors, they, to some degree, they I think become really desensitized to a lot of things, and so they don't necessarily understand it from the other side as much as they see it time and time and time again perhaps. They don't really understand it from the other side. So I felt like it was a really good little break for them to see the other side from a more cheery perspective, if that makes sense. So the Legling. So my Legling, my amputation is above the knee, which in and of itself creates a certain level of complications. The higher it is, the more you have to physically exert yourself for each step. And for the fitting process, dealing with a below knee amputation as opposed to an above knee amputation is really different. And then there's hip dysarticulation. I believe that's when it's like all the way up. I don't have any experience with that, so maybe one day I'll have somebody with expertise talk about that. But for now, I'll talk about my situation. So one of the things that happens if you don't get into a prosthetic is you don't have the leg contained, because when you have a prosthetic, the residual limb, the Legling in this case, is contained in the socket. Usually there's a liner and then there's a socket, and that keeps a level of compression that keeps fluid from building up. So I've been 17 years nearly. Next month will be 17 years since the accident. So I've been nearly 17 years of no compression. And so the leg is never fully shrunk, which is really not a problem. It's still smaller than my full leg thigh, and it causes me no issues. So until now, there hasn't been a reason to bother with it. So up until I get the prosthetic, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm wearing a liner. And I have the liner on my lap here. I'll show you in a moment. The liner is, at this moment, getting my leg used to, number one, the absence of air, because there is no breathing in this thing. And also it's getting it acclimated to, or getting it compressed, so some of the fluid buildup is starting to come out. It will really only make a significant difference once I'm actually walking, because utilizing the muscles and all that will push the fluid out of the residual limb. So let me show you. This is the socket, and you can see, or the socket, this is the liner. You can see it's been cut. This is up at my hip, right? So it's very interesting to see it in reverse on the thing. But so the interior is silicone, which is why it does not breathe at all, which is, I'm sure, going to be a blast in the summer. I'm told that after a while your residual limb stops sweating, because it realizes that the exercise of sweating, which is supposed to cool you, does not function anymore on that part of the body, so it ceases to do it, or it at least lessens. So we'll see how that goes over time. The socket is turned, why do I keep saying socket? The liner is turned inside out in order for me to put it on, because it's not going to slide. So I turn it inside out, and then I essentially roll it up until it's fully onto the limb. Now this section right here, I never had this previously. So this is an Ossur liner, that's the brand, and I'm going to be using a suction socket. So what happens at the bottom of this socket, there's actually a hole where there's, I want to say lid, but that's not right. But there's like a screw-in thing with a gasket and a air release valve. So as I put my leg ling into the socket, at first you take the cover, the cap off, and you go into a certain degree, and then once you get to a certain level, you put the cap back on, and you kind of push up and down, you move up and down, putting the weight through until all of the water is, seriously though, all of the air is released from the socket, and then this this gasket creates the lock, essentially, and keeps the socket, and therefore the prosthetic that's under it, on my body. So I'm wearing this, honestly, not every day. Kirk, I know. My skin is still adjusting. It gives me rashes and stuff, and especially if I'm going to the pool and whatever, and my skin's kind of recovering from the chlorine and whatever, sometimes I just can't. So today I wore it up until a little while ago. I just washed it, so it's still kind of wet. But this is where I'm at now. This is the liner. This will, at some point, I imagine my leg will shrink enough and I'll need a new liner and it'll be smaller and so on. But these are actually made to allow for some change in volume, which my previous one didn't do. And the way that they handle that is this gasket will come down. Another fabric, like sock, sort of, right? Like a tube sock sort of thing, will come over and then lay into here, and then the gasket will come back up. It'll be flipped up over it. So it'll increase the tension, right? And keep the lock in the lock of the suction active. So that's an introduction to the liner. If you have any questions, again, please, it'll definitely make it easier for me, like I said, to cater to what you guys want to know. And any kind of comments you'd like to leave, obviously it's good for the channel. Any likes, subscribes, and comments are always good from the metrics perspective for the channel itself. So thank you very much for your support and for your interest in my story and the process. And I look forward to getting some questions and answering your direct questions and sharing the rest of my journey as I go. It's time now for me to go and do some meditation so I can get myself ready for bed. I am back to work this week. I went back to work, so we've got the full-time work thing and then trying to get all these things handled. So busy, busy, busy. Meditation, gotta happen. So have an awesome day or night or whenever time you're watching this. Have an awesome week. Have an awesome weekend. Have an awesome life. Like, just, I think I said it last time, always find a reason to smile. There's always something to be grateful for, always something to be happy about. Look for those things, hang on to them, and focus on them as much as you can. Because if you want a good quality of life, if you want to be happy, it's a choice that you make about how and what you focus on. So be happy, my. Have a wonderful night. I'll talk to you soon. Mwah!